Welcome. I can see folks trickling in. We'll give it a minute or so as folks make their way to the webinar and get settled. Maureen, we forgot to pick a song to kick us off with as folks come in, but thank you. Okay, I will go ahead and kick us off. Thank you so much for everyone that is here this afternoon. My name is Jessie Marr, and I am the director of our technology program. I will be the MC for today. As the slide says, we are recording this session and we'll share it out afterwards as well as the slide deck. And I really invite folks to use the chat. This webinar will feel pretty insufficient. We're going to hear from a lot of folks, and it's the first time that we're being able to talk about the Water Data Prize. And so I imagine you will leave with more questions and answers, but just know this is the first of many that we will have in this series, sharing out our lessons learned and highlighting the innovation from the Water Data Prize. And again, please feel free to put questions in the chat along the way, and we will collate that for a Q&A at the end, and then make sure to answer any questions that we don't get to. And so with that, I'm going to pass it off to Maureen Cunningham, who is the Deputy Director of Water at EPIC, to tell us why we are here.
Thanks, Jessie. So I'm Maureen Cunningham, Director of Water at the Environmental Policy Innovation Center, or EPIC. EPIC is a DC-based growing nonprofit organization and a policy think tank, and we like to call ourselves a think do tank. Although we're based in Washington, DC, we actually have a fully remote staff based all over the United States. Our mission is speed. We build policies that deliver spectacular improvements in the speed of environmental progress. Our mission of speed is especially important when it comes to things like contaminated water, because we don't want people drinking contaminated water for 1 minute longer. So we focus on innovation and new ideas and quick responses to achieve positive results faster. We have programs ranging from restoration and mitigation on tribal lands to endangered species, to water quality partnerships, and of course, our water program as well. Our water program focuses on water infrastructure financing, building trust in water supplies, and lead service line replacement, among other things. We'll talk mostly about lead today. So why now? When we started thinking about lead service line replacement and helping municipalities boost their lead service lines, this was a year ago, and a lot has changed in the last year, and there's basically a lot of opportunity now. In the last year, we see almost a year ago, President Biden making this declaration that he was aiming to replace 100% of America's lead pipes and lead service lines. We had never heard that before from a president making such a proclamation. But along with that proclamation was also a lot of action. We saw the American Rescue Plan get passed about a year ago. And now we see a lot of municipalities like Newburgh, New York, using that American Rescue funds for lead service line replacement. We saw the bipartisan infrastructure law pass late last year, with $15 billion going to states through the SRF, the State Revolving Fund program, to help communities replace their lead lines. And then, of course, last but not least, at the end of 2021, the lead and copper rule revisions were made effective, and now the clock starts ticking, and all water systems will have to develop inventories over the next 3 years. So there's a lot happening in lead and a lot of opportunity, but we wanted to basically speed up the process. We don't want to wait a minute longer for these lead pipes that have been in the ground for basically 100 years or more. We think they should be replaced in the next decade. So how do we do this? We launched the Water Data Prize, and I'm going to pass it back to Jesse soon to talk about the details, but to basically remove and replace lead lines faster, more equitably, more efficiently across the country. So this prize is all about spurring innovation and new ideas and templates that water systems can use to replace their lead lines faster. And I'll pass it back to Jesse.
Awesome. Thank you, Maureen. So as many of y'all may know, this year's Water Data Prize had a prize pool of $100,000, and we were able to give out 6 awards, which we'll talk about today, but generally the categories were an overall winner. So what do we definitely need to have to dramatically increase the pace and scale of lead pipe replacement? And then we thought about, there's lots of things that go into that. So the first is you need an inventory. So where are the lead pipes to then be able to say where you're going to direct your resources? The second is the mapping category. So maybe I have that data, but I don't yet know how to display that in a publicly accessible, really user-friendly way to understand, so a resident can understand, is my water safe to drink or not? The third is equity. So how are we going to develop and design and implement a lead pipe replacement program that is equitable and thinking about a lot of the different communities that need access to lead pipe replacement? And then the last is there's just communications across the board in terms of letting residents know the challenges that they might face in their drinking water, as well as what the city is doing on a proactive basis to replace lead pipes. And then lastly, we knew that there are things beyond those 4 categories, and wanted to give space for any out of the box or wildcard ideas that came through as well, which we'll talk about. And so to evaluate these submissions, we had a great group of judges that ranged from community advocates, communication specialists, technologists, folks that have just been in the water industry for a long time and knows what it needs to take to remove lead pipes. And so to kick us off, I'm going to pass it over to one of our judges, Chris Sanowski from WaterClick, to share a bit about what he saw and learned in that process.
Thank you, Jesse. I'll wait to get my video hopefully turned on. I have it on. All right, there we go. So first of all, a huge thanks to all the folks at Epic and all the great submissions from all the companies. Judging is always hardest when the differences between a lot of these innovations are pretty subtle. So obviously you've heard today accurately inventorying these service lines, then mapping, prioritizing replacement. It's a difficult business. It is exceptionally challenging because much of this data, as we know, was buried many decades ago. So I'm here today on behalf of the large number of judges that it was a blast to serve with alongside. And Jesse showed you there was a variety of judges and backgrounds out there. And I can definitely assure you that there wasn't just diversity in submission, but there was a good diversity of judges in our background. And it was a pretty neat blessing to review all the creative ideas found on solving the problem. So my primary message today is to tell you that it was a hard thing to do with this. We were all grateful to have the Wowza category to land on as well. And but going through this, we were certainly looking at a lot of really important things. And I think these are kind of calls to action for all of us that are in the industry. Obviously, level of engagement and engaging with people when you are trying to solve a problem is important because the people are part of the solution. So whether you're getting a test kit at home or whether you're engaging with your water utility online for the first time in your life, engaging stakeholders is really important. Obviously, we're looking at innovation, we're looking at creativity, degrees of accessibility. It used to be where we only focused on the majority, but now we are focusing on everybody out there too. This is especially important with lead. Implementation is important too, because we're looking to make some of these solutions in the world scalable. So meaning we can copy it and paste it to another community. So as we think of the highly consultative past in this industry to transitioning to a little bit more of a transactional implementation, this is important that we make things easy for communities to buy into quickly, because that ultimately lowers the cost, which at sometimes I just want to point out is at odds for those of us in the private sector that are looking to make money off the solution. So I think the call in this is to improve on that. Obviously, the public health implications, I think, speak to themselves the priorities and why those are important too. So my wrap up today message is twofold from the judge's perspective. Thank you, number one, to the companies out there that are working hard to come up with these products and services in a way that solve the problem, but also end up in kind of feeding the economy that we have created with this issue. But number two, our call to action, and maybe more of an admonition today, is that we're not done. As much as like usually we hear you've got the prize, you've won the race. In this case, unlike many prizes, the race is not won and the solution has not been found. So as much as we're going to celebrate and we're going to go back to our jobs thinking that these smart companies came up with some awesome solutions, let's also go back to our jobs and continue to understand that the solution we're continuing to look for involves people, technology, sweat, and maybe a few more innovations that have left to be found. So thank you, Jesse and team. It was a privilege to be able to judge, but I'm excited to hear from everybody too on the backside of this.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. This is just like, okay, we have the ideas, now we have to get to work. And so next, and kind of I think what most people are here today to hear is from our awardees directly. And so we'll walk through each of the categories and hear from each of the folks. And so to kick us off is Brian Kearney from CDM Smith, who won the overall prize category in collaboration with the City of Newark.
Thank you, Jesse. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Kearney, and I'm a senior project manager and associate with CDM Smith in Edison, New Jersey. We'd like to thank the Environmental Policy Innovation Center, or EPIC, for recognizing CDM Smith and the City of Newark as the overall winner of the Water Data Prize today. So thank you, and the judges as well. So the City of Newark began service line replacements in March of 2019 as an 8-year program to replace all of the city's lead service lines. However, 6 months into the program, it was clear to us that while we could execute the work quickly and replace service lines, we didn't have the necessary signups, nor were we able to reach all of the residents within the city. So that was the problem. We could do the work, we could do it quickly, but we couldn't reach everybody. So one of the issues we found was the original cost of the program was prohibited to many residents. The program was originally up to $1,000 contribution from the homeowner. And the second hurdle in Newark was approximately 70% of Newark residents are actually renters. And the landlords had no incentives to sign up for a lead replacement program on behalf of their tenants. So through the political will of the City of Newark, Essex County, and the state of New Jersey, several laws and ordinances were passed, which allowed the city to accelerate the program while making the program equitable for all residents by replacing all of the city's 23,000 lead service lines in 3 years at no cost to the residents and no capital outlay by the residents, no tax increase and no rate hikes. So the two biggest acts of legislation included a state law allowing public funds to be used for private lead service line replacements. And the second was a city ordinance mandating lead service line replacements while allowing tenants to provide entry and access for the city to change their lead service line without a landlord's consent. So the city removed and did not want tenants to be at the mercy of their landlords to obtain clean drinking water. So there's several components of our program that we feel are necessary for any community undertaking a lead service line replacement. Can we go back, Jesse? Sorry. First two items I wanted to hit on quick, education and transparency. So public outreach, education, ran the gambit from having teams knocking on doors, partnering with local community groups, block associations, setting up comprehensive websites in multiple languages, social media updates, yard signs, in-person meetings, virtual meetings. And $200 million was spent by the city on its lead service line replacement program, and approximately 70% of that money stayed within the city. So not only did the city's contracting community step up in the public bidding as a prime contractor, but smaller city-based minority and women-owned businesses were also engaged. And these firms participated in everything from construction inspection, material supply, printing information, plumbing work, and actually house cleaning. So in addition, the city partnered with local union halls on an apprenticeship program to train Newarkers on the skills needed to earn a wage in a union job that could not only benefit the replacement program, but also future infrastructure projects within the region. And then the last items in the toolbox is how we leverage technology so that no house was left behind. And I guess next slide, Jesse. So once the city had access to the remaining 70% of the homes, and by removing the cost to the residents, the city was really able to accelerate the program in September of 2019 from the original 8-year program to a 3-year program. The city required maximum performance by its contractors to advance down the street, block by block, checking every home, replacing every lead line, every galvanized line, such that we perform work at our peak of about 120 homes per day. So Newark's lead service line replacement program involved work at over 27,000 individual homes. And the program itself really was a logistics project managing over 27,000 individual projects, resulting in 23,000 lead service lines replaced, 80 miles of streets paved, 12,000 water samples analyzed, 41,000 filters, 37,000 cartridges over the course of 3 years while navigating a global pandemic and international supply chain issues. So that's where the technology, robust databases, dashboards came into play. And by using programs like eBuilder and ArcGIS, we were able to utilize technology and roll that out to the public for online signups, address lookup tools, and just keeping the residents informed, updated, and engaged on the program. So with that, I just thank the team at CDM Smith, the City of Newark, all the various contractors, subcontractors, and I think most importantly, the residents really opening their homes and allowing us to remove lead from their drinking water supply. So Jesse.
Thank you, Brian. That is really spectacular and great work.
Thank you.
You can hold your questions to the end, folks. We will have time for discussion, but feel free to put those in the chat as we go, and we'll make sure to collate those. And so next up is Megan Glover from 120 Water, who's the winner in the inventory category.
Thank you so much, Jesse. And thank you to everyone at EPIC, the judges of the Water Data Prize, fellow awardees and nominees. It is an awesome to share the Zoom with you all, and special acknowledgement, I think, to the incredible team at Newark, CDM Smith, and the City of Newark in general. It was an absolute honor to play even a small portion of that program. Absolutely a model of success. And when we talk about template building and best practices to latch on, I know that's one that's going to be decades to come. So again, 120 Water. Next slide, please. So in terms of inventory management, what do I need to have in my toolkit to quickly and efficiently remove all toxic lead pipes? Really, the foundational data set is a lead service line inventory. And Maureen, as you mentioned, and there's legislation that's going to actually force all water systems in the US to actually have one of these by 2024 for both the public and the private side, a daunting task for most. Next slide, please. Quickly, a little bit about 120, and then we'll get into how we approached our submission. So 120 Water, so we're a digital water platform of software, kits, and services, and that's applied to regulators and water systems across the country to manage lead reduction programs at their various stages, from planning to inventory management to replacement to compliance of LCRR. All in, we've worked in over 30 states across 230 programs at various stages, all the way from, again, IOUs all the way down to rural water. So we've seen a lot of flavors of different playbooks applied to some of these programs, and we're excited to kind of bring that together into our story for the Water Data Prize submission. Next slide, please. So when we think about how we approached it, inventory management is daunting by and large to most utilities. I mean, the question is, where do I even start? So one of the things that we wanted to do to highlight, to serve as a template for all utilities, regardless of size, is that it's truly a journey. And oftentimes that journey has many speed bumps rather than, cutting corners, right? Rather than, what do you call those? Pass-throughs, right? There are a lot more speed bumps than there are just kind of highways. And so what we wanted to do through Bob is really tell that compliance journey story, or that inventory journey story, in a way that any single water water system, regardless of size, could break down the pieces and parts needed to really build these inventories that are going to serve as that foundational element to not only compliance, but the eventual immediate replacement of lead service lines. And I think that's important to note because we really do believe that inventory management and the foundational building of that data set is foundational for not only achieving compliance, but also getting these pipes out of the ground as soon as possible. So again, wanted to make sure that everyone understood that it is a journey, and it is a journey of not only data aggregation into a location-based data set using data that you already have within the utility, but also having to go outside of your utility to bring data in to create that preliminary inventory. And then there are steps along the way in that journey to validate that, because that initial inventory is going to be filled with a lot of unknowns. And those unknowns don't really help us get the lead out faster. And so there are a lot of different verification techniques once you get that initial data set in, whether that be internally using predictive intelligence or externally doing customer surveys and lead swab kits, all the way to field verification for potholing as a last result where you need to see the line. So again, I think our submission and what we were trying to do and really the outcome of the work was to actually really showcase that inventory management is an ongoing journey. Yes, there is this 2024 date in which the preliminary inventories must be shipped to regulators, but it's really about ongoing. How are you putting that data management and that verification best practices into your operations on an ongoing basis to turn those unknowns into knowns and eventually put those on our replacement schedule to get the lead out. So again, just super, super proud to be among the nominees and the awardees. And hopefully this can be a leave behind in a playbook that others can use to take that what is right now very daunting and break it into the actionable steps that anyone can use to build these inventories that are so foundational to our regulatory and replacement success. So thank you all very much.
Thank you for that, Megan. And so next up is the mapping category. And as you'll see, these are all very interrelated, but going to pass it over to Kitos and Kedar to walk through their mapping submission.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. First off, let me begin by saying that was really great working on mapping, and thanks to you and the entire team at Epic for giving us the opportunity. Could we go to the next one? Yeah, my name is Kedar. I'm a data scientist at Kitos, and Kitos is the first in the market to do real-time water quality monitoring using a very comprehensive vertically integrated tech stack. And we do that by combining our proprietary hardware with our software platform. And that using that, we're able to get real-time insights into what the quality of water is at customer sites and generate large data sets. Currently, we have customers across agricultural, municipal, and industrial organizations. And just because we have been dealing with this large data set, at the frequency of real-time data, I think that puts us in a very unique position to be able to communicate and visualize that data on a map. And we use all of that expertise, all of our lessons that we learned from there to build a comprehensive mapping strategy that utilities can use to build to visualize their own lead service line inventory. Could we go to the next one, Jesse? All right, thank you. So when we began working on this, we started with a detailed analysis of all of the existing lead service line mapping solutions out there. And we noticed that there are essentially three different issues with the existing solutions. One, they're usually custom built for large utilities, and that decreases their generalizability and affordability across the other utilities. Secondly, they require what's known as technological lock-in, which means that as a utility, I don't get a lot of flexibility in terms of what tools and techniques I want to use to build my maps. And thirdly, not all of them are very readable and understandable. So by understanding these shortcomings and seeking inspiration in the existing solutions, what we did was we came up with a new strategy that can allow utilities to build a new map just in 3 steps. So in step 1, utilities bring in their own data. If not, we can also work with the utilities to generate their own LSL inventory. In the second step, we transform that data using very basic transformation steps, just so that our mapping tools knows what kind of data it's looking at. And in the third and the final step, we refresh our data, configure the mapping tool, and deploy it to the public. And just by having a universal data model built in the backend, we are no longer requiring utilities to build their own, star schemas and worry about all of the technical details involved in the data transformation. We have also tried to decouple storage layer from the visual layer, which means that just because utilities have all of their data stored in spreadsheets right now, should never be a blocker for them to start building out their own maps. We've also tried to convey information in stages because we believe that it can get overwhelming for a viewer to see all of those details all at once. We have used a lot of animations, tutorials, cartoons at different places to convey all of this information and make it enjoyable to read. And because of all of this, I believe we have made our dashboards very engaging and interactive in nature. Viewers can download data, they can interact and drill through and get all cool insights. And on the next slide, we'll see that our mapping solution is not just a single map, it's rather a complete digital mapping booklet. And it's split into three main sections. In the first section, we walk a user through the tutorial, how to read the map, how to navigate the different elements that are involved in the map, which I believe is very crucial to educating an end user. In the second section, that's where we show our actual map. And in that map, viewers can filter by their neighborhood, or they can directly jump to their own address. And when they find their property, they can hover over it. And in the form of a tooltip, they can now see how the lead service line material makeup, it's split between the private and the public side. And on clicking on it, they are navigated to recommendations. In other words, additional steps that tell them what to do. Let's say if they have lead material in their service lines. And in the final and the third section, we have kind of kept it open in a way that utilities can bring in any data that they want, any custom metrics that they want, and they can tell a data story. For demonstration, although what we have done is we have been collecting a lot of SDWI reports, and we've tried to visualize those insights in the form of LCR violation metrics. And at Ketos, not just all of this open source data, just the fact that we are able to detect concentration of heavy metals like lead in water at concentrations as low as 1 parts per billion, places us in a very unique place where we can now generate a lead profile for a utility in their own city. And for all the utilities on this call, I just have to say that we don't really have to spend a lot of capital on overhauling our existing data infrastructure just to build a map, right? And I hope that you give us the opportunity to demonstrate that to you. And I'm sure that mapping is probably the first step in trying to replace the entire lead service line infrastructure in your city. Thank you for your time. That was me. If you are interested in demo, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either to me or to anyone on the team. And thank you, Jesse and the team again for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Kedar. I'm going to keep us moving right along. Next up, I'm really excited to introduce Jyoti from New Jersey Future, whose presentation with Jersey Waterworks won the Equity Prize.
Jesse. So first of all, I want to start off by saying thank you to for winning this prize on behalf of Jersey Water Check Data Advisory Committee, the Water Risk and Equity Subcommittee members and the team. Thank you for this recognition. We're truly grateful. I want to start off by grounding our presentation in the why, right? We heard a lot of information on the importance of removing lead service lines. So here are some 3 points I wanted to share. New Jersey's water systems must meet their statutory obligations to replace all lead service lines in 10 years. That's an ambitious mandate. Currently, about 4.8 million people, over half of our state's population, live in service areas where they could be served by a lead pipe. And we know that the cost for replacing these pipes can be burdensome. especially for the 20% of New Jersey households that face an affordability stress. So innovative data tools that we shared in our application, Jersey Water Check and the New Jersey Water Risk and Equity Map, can help both decision makers and residents not only track progress, but also identify priority areas with an equity lens. The screenshot you're seeing here is from Jersey Water Check, and that's the first tool we put as part of our application. Jersey Water Check is this easy to use website, it's user-friendly, where residents and decision makers can track progress at an individual utility level in how many lead pipes are being identified and how many are being replaced. You can also see information on a statewide level. So for example, this screenshot here is from the benchmark on Jersey Water Check. And it shows for each utility, what is the percentage of households that are facing affordability stress? They're unable to pay their utility bills. So this kind of granular level utility information is really helpful in identifying patterns in progress as we move towards removing the lead service pipelines. Next slide, please. So connected to Jersey Water Check and the other tool in our application is the New Jersey Water Risk and Equity Map. This is a map where users can visualize and see where the lead service pipelines are and where they're getting replaced. Users can also add additional information like flooding or income levels, and that can help highlight areas that have concentrated water and equity risks. Over the next few years, and if we get additional funding, through enhancements, viewers can actually see the progress that's being made. Where are the most progress happening and where is progress stalling? So this screenshot is actually showcasing the geographic footprint of 3 Jersey Water Check metrics. It shows the percentage of households that are stressed, the affordability stress by water service area, the number of lead service lines by water service area, and the water systems that had action level lead exceedance. So I want to circle back into the why. I started with, why these tools are important, right? New Jersey really has the opportunity to be the first in the state to replace all its lead service lines. And innovative tools like Jersey Water Check and the New Jersey Water Risk Equity Map can help consumers understand what is happening in my community. How does the progress in my community track with progress in other communities? It can help utility leaders and municipal leaders show progress and build the necessary case for water infrastructure investment. And in some places with state support where there's affordability constraints. All of this will help build the general support we need to stay and do the progress work that's needed over a period of 2 years, 4 years, and 10 years till the work gets done. One of our other aims with these data tools is to help advocates learn to use these data tools to promote water equitable infrastructure investments. So I want to wrap up by saying thank you for this opportunity and kudos to all award winners.
Thank you, Jody. And next up, we have Sam from Raftellus, whose group will talk about the communications work.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Appreciate that. On behalf of Raftellus, I want to thank everyone so much for the recognition and congratulate the other winners for their excellent submissions. And I also want to formally acknowledge and thank, before I say anything else, Jeff Bronowski at the City of Akron, who was very generous and willing to be our inspiration for our entry. And then finally, just to acknowledge, because I didn't do much of this work at all, it was my teammates at Raftellus, graphic designer Ashley Perry, writer and communicator Matt Wittern, and data expert Joe Crea. And as we sat down to develop the entry, the one thing that we knew would be very vital for this year's prize is to have a utility partner. So that the idea that we developed wasn't just theoretical, but had the input and blessing, if you will, from someone that might actually need and use our ideas. So working with Jeff was really critical because it gave us a real example of how lead communication is being done, which presented some opportunities that we thought that we could build on. So before I dive into that, just a few quick notes about communicating about lead. What do you need to do for a successful program? You need to communicate, because lead is a scary topic. It's a complex topic, and it's part of that intersection with the customer and the utility or the public water system. The communications is that starting point for trust, and trust is so needed for something like this. So you have to really take your utility hat off and put your consumer hat on. You have to get into the mindset of a customer and think of someone who has never worked in water, knows nothing about water science, has young children, has a family, is concerned about every potential threat out there, as moms do, and really is seeking to, is concerned about and seeking to protect their family and just secure their health. So when you do this exercise, really visualizing who is receiving this info and how they receive it, it can have a real profound impact on the way that you communicate, the words you choose, the choice of imagery, all the things. Next slide. So what we chose to do was work with Akron on their website. They had a website, a part of their city site that was dedicated to lead communications. And right away, as we scanned it, we could tell it was very solid, good communications, but we saw opportunities to make it a little bit better for the viewer. And what we really wanted was to create something that other utilities could see the value and the change and adopt for themselves. Jesse, I'm not sure if we can scroll over to these links on the internet. If not, no worries, I can just talk through. But if you can, that's great. The first challenge Akron had is the one that we're most aware that public utilities, cities have, which is the very constricting design of their utility website. In Akron's case, Jeff is confined to this very narrow central column for all of his content because the left and the right are dedicated to other things. So while the information is good and it flows well, the topics are broken out, the text is small, the imagery is small, it's hard to see. It's a very cluttered site, which is very typical for cities. They're making do and they're doing the best that they can, but it's not ideal. And it's certainly not ideal for helping build understanding and confidence and again, that trust factor. The other part of it is the words that we use. We use terms like treatment technique and ingestion, and even like using the word flush to refer to an activity that has nothing to do with toilets. So thinking through, again, the customer hat and how does this information land with them really can change the way that you approach it. So we remade the Akron site about lead, better ways to present the information, more flexibility in the layout. Everything from word choice to the way we named the navigation in the upper right corner was done with the consumer's thought process in mind. The increased text size, ample white space, large immersive imagery, as you can see on the right there, it makes it much easier and less daunting for somebody to read. It draws them in. And it's ADA compliant and the language is accessible to more audiences. This approach does require a few things from a public water system. One is there's a little bit of a financial investment to create a vanity website using Squarespace. We chose Squarespace because it's really economical. All in, you're way under $500. It's about $25, $30 a month for your site usage, maybe $50 a year for the domain and the domain hosting. So not expensive, but more than what you would have if you just used your current site. Two is it requires a willingness on the part of the agency to allow a vanity site for a special topic to get around the confines of the traditional website. At Reftellus, we work with thousands of utilities and communities across the country for special projects. We are seeing success kind of adopting a vanity site, whether it's for a particular infrastructure project or something like this, or even water quality. And we have lots of friends in the sector that have successfully just gotten permission, and others who have asked for forgiveness rather than permission. And third, it's this commitment to resources, this commitment to talk, this commitment of time, this commitment of resources for this very important topic. And if adding the site's not in the cards for you, it's really worth having this conversation with your IT or webmaster to explain the connection between ease of use and communication and trust. The final note I'll say is that good communication that's done well, it's much more than a website. It's a conversation. It's a back and forth. It's ongoing. It's happening often. It's many times with many people in many ways. Your lead communications is or should be part of a real larger proactive effort. I wouldn't say campaign, because that sounds like a start and an end. And this is really, this ongoing thing that you've got to talk about regularly with your community, a proactive effort about water quality and all that you do, as well as the role that the consumer plays in their water quality, which they have a huge role. So you cannot rely on your CCR to do this for you once a year. And in fact, one could argue the CCR does you no favors in the confidence department. So you really need this wider program. And in short, good quality communication requires you to think like your customer and build for them. This will require an investment in time and money and a commitment there, but the payback is trust. And with the trust, you will have more success, not just getting support for your investments, but weathering a crisis should you experience one. So I'll leave it with that. And thank you guys so much. We're really honored to be a part of this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I couldn't switch to the links during this, but we'll put those in the chat for folks to scroll around. And last, I am excited to introduce Anna Wolfe from the Center for Neighborhood Technology, whose collaboration with Blue Conduit and IBM landed them the wildcard category. So over to you, Anna.
Great, thanks everyone. Thanks, Jesse. CNT and our partners in this project, as Jesse mentioned, Blue Conduit and IBM, are so honored to have our work highlighted in this way, and we're really pleased to be here in company with the other groups. Thanks again to Epic and the judges for the Wildcard Award, and congrats to the other winners. The body of work is really exciting. I'm Anna Wolfe, the Director of Water Equity at the Center for Neighborhood Technology. We are a Chicago-based nonprofit. I'm here to highlight the work that we completed in 2019, well, mostly 2020 actually, in partnership with IBM's Service Corps program and Blue Conduit. If you want to switch to the next slide, Jesse, thank you. We developed a community playbook that provides a framework for small to mid-sized communities interested in using predictive analytics to develop service line, lead service line, water service line inventories. So as I mentioned, in 2019, really early 2020, we began conversations with Blue Conduit and IBM's Service Corps program about experimentally applying a version of Blue Conduit's predictive analytics model that was used in Flint into very small communities in Chicago's south suburbs, the villages of Flossmoor and Hazelcrest. Those communities were interested in developing water service line inventories. Inventories are required by all communities in the state of Illinois by the EPA, Illinois EPA, but the state does not require any sort of basis of sort of reliability for informing the inventory. And so we worked with these two communities to see how much data we could dig up that would tell us exactly what's underground, and then how to apply a predictive approach to extrapolating out for the rest of the parcels in the communities. So our groups all worked together to identify relevant and available data sets, gather and analyze the data, and then we created an interactive map for each community. One of the outputs of the project was this playbook, and it outlines the steps that we took, both starting from the understanding the environment, the community context, all the way through to leveraging the data and analysis for future uses, whether those uses might be educational, policy, internal decision-making, or others that come up. Again, the playbook is written with small to medium-sized communities in mind, and we include several questions that decision makers and planners can ask themselves when getting started on this daunting task. For instance, we asked our community partners to reflect on what their goals for the project was. Is it planning for replacement schedules? Is it ensuring that they have a sort of transparent mapping interface for public knowledge and community engagement? Was it simply to fulfill state EPA requirements? Is there a community health crisis, something else? And then also, because the South suburbs are such a group of small, population-wise small communities, we wanted our partners to reflect on whether there are any other partnering or neighboring communities that might be doing similar work that could support their efforts and find some economies of scale. And the playbook also includes a case study of our work in the village of Hazel Crest, which kind of uniquely occurred, well, novelty, the pandemic was of course a novelty at that time. And so we were trying to figure out how to work in partnership with a community that was on the front lines of a public health crisis. So that created some unique challenges that we sort of referenced throughout the playbook. Let's see, next slide. We're running short on time, so I'll just sort of skim through. I've listed here, you can see behind the key takeaways boxes is the snapshot of our map for the village of Hazel Crest. And one of the unique aspects of this work is that we were able to leverage the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association, a council of governments that operates in the South suburbs of Chicago, who sort of manage and maintain GIS systems for a lot of these communities. And so Hazel Crest, their map is now accessible to them via the SSMMA website, and they can go out into the field, collect new data about parcels that are have not been ground truthed yet, and they can feed that new information from the field back into the map and update the model. So they get sort of a real-time adjusted probabilistic output as they go out into the field and expand their understanding of what's underground. So we talk a little bit about what that process looks like of once you have the map, how to maintain and update it on an ongoing basis. So the key takeaways from this work really run the gamut from defining goals and setting limits appropriately, doing this early, making sure that you're not you understand what your data requirements are going to be based on what your goals are. Also making sure that the data is accessible and of high quality. We ran into a lot of hiccups looking for data sources that we spent a lot of time trying to get, and then they ended up not being useful. So sort of weighing like how much time you can invest versus what the payoff will be. And then making decisions fast. That's of course something that we had to grapple with during the pandemic. When to go into the community and try to get data to analyze or make analyzable, and when to sort of set that aside and say, well, actually, maybe we go this route instead. We also had the benefit of working with IBM, who has optical character recognition software that we were able to leverage and convert some handwritten text to sort of smart documents that we could drop into the model. So we talk a little bit about what that process is. And whether communities might find it accessible to them, or if it's too expensive, what other manner might you be able to make use of those types of resources. We see this playbook as a complementary resource to the many other already existing great resources out there, including so many of the tools that folks on this webinar talked about. We also hope that the playbook helps to demystify some elements of predictive analytics that, when used for these types of common good projects, can really increase efficiency and economy. Let's see, I think that's it. Our playbook is undergoing some finishing touches, but should be available online within the next week. So we thank everyone again for the recognition, and we hope folks find the resource helpful.
Wonderful, thank you for wrapping us up, Anna. And for everyone, the submissions will be on our website, waterdataprize.com/winners. You can see all of them, as well as the runner-ups. And in the coming weeks, we will be publishing a best practices guide, kind of lifting up ideas and tips from not only the awardees, but also others from the Water Data Prize. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that this is just the start. There is a huge implementation phase coming out of this. And I wanted to lift up that Maureen Cunningham is leading our work on lead. We have the Lead Free Water Challenge, as well as a municipal peer network, where mainly small and mid-sized municipalities can kind of exchange notes and share lessons learned. And so if you're interested or know other municipalities that should be engaged or involved in the implementation of any of these ideas, don't hesitate to reach out. And so with that, we have about 10 minutes for Q&A. I know that I have a number of questions, but feel free to put anything in the chat. And Chris and I will be facilitating this discussion. And I don't know, Chris, if you want to start off with any question or if I should. Nope, there you go.
I don't see any questions.
Oh, okay, I'll start. So I think one of the things that came up and maybe since we didn't have as much time is how have folks worked in both rural or urban areas? And maybe what are some composition of the types of communities that you worked with? Not for anyone in particular, but feel free to come off mute if you'd like to take that question.
I guess I can start, Jesse. Newark obviously is a urban environment and urban city. And what we really found is Newark is a small town. So when people had to go to work, their neighbors were there to unlock their front doors for us, allow access into to their neighbors' homes so we could do the work. We've started to do some more work in suburbia where that isn't always the case in some of these bedroom communities of New Jersey where we have a lot of commuters, and the suburbs, which I think we thought were going to be a little easier, are actually a little more challenging, trying to get people scheduled so that we can do this work, as opposed to the inner city where the community minus the block associations really came together and allowed us to do this project and do it quickly on a block by block approach.
All right, so I'll tap in on this one question. I guess this is a question for all of you. What technologies out there get you excited about how we can solve this problem quicker? That's a pretty big question, but like to anybody out there, and feel free to raise your hand or unmute, but what kind of technologies that you see get you excited when you think about better ways to solve this?
I can try to talk about a few things that I see from a mapping point of view. And to be honest, like I've already mentioned, utilities or anyone in particular, they don't need to have access to fancy, costly technology just to build a map of their inventory. And I highly rely on open source because there is brilliant open source mapping, governance, transformation tools out there. And in my opinion, anyone can do a quick search, find a lot of whatever mapping tools that work from them, stitch a solution together, and that should work just fine. And the strategy that we have put forward, it's from that lens itself. So, and the bottom line is that we don't really need to spend a lot of money on expensive mapping tools. We can just pick whatever open source map works for us and run with it.
Could you give an example, Kedar, of what is an open source map?
Yeah, sure. So I'll tell you what tool we are using, although it's not really open source. We are currently using Microsoft Power BI. Again, that's not open source, but there's if your maps are public facing, you don't have to pay them anything, right? So that's one example of how you can build a map at low costs. But in addition to that, there are many JavaScript libraries that I know of, even Python-based libraries that can very easily build maps for you. Although scaling such maps is a little challenging, that might need some technical expertise. But again, all solutions, I guess this problem is solved in open source. It's just a matter of knowing the right tools.
I just to bring a little levity, I just love it that the data science guy gets excited about JavaScript and Python. So for all the utilities out there, those are programming languages that you have to find somebody like Kedar to help you with that. But in all honesty, I get excited about JavaScript too, Kedar, so we're all good.
Yeah, but Chris, I'm gonna call out the elephant in there. Honestly, I think there's a lot of open source and free stuff out there, but hats off to all of the technology products as a service that are, I mean, a lot of them are on this call, right? Purpose built to solve these problems at scale. So I think without seeming self-serving, Chris, I think that this is this collection of resources is a fantastic start in terms of what technologies we should get excited about at solving not only this problem, but water problems of the future.
Yeah, thank you. And that is self-serving for me too, but I will add too, I get excited about Squarespace. I've used Squarespace a bunch of times. So thank you, Sam, for plugging that too, because man, you can build some awesome looking customer facing stuff for like ridiculously low cost,
Yeah.
like swipe a credit card, $50. And
Gone
you
are the
might have
days when you
yourself a
need,
nice communication tool.
yes. I can't stress enough that gone are the days when you need 20 grand for a website. You just don't. You need some good quality content. And like I said, $500. The other technology that I just wanted to say that I'm really excited about is Zoom and all of these virtual meeting opportunities that we kind of got propelled into in the last couple of years. And they've now become sort of, dare I say, commonplace for a lot of communities. And it's really leveled the bar for participation and engagement. So you don't need childcare and you don't need transportation. You can attend these meetings and get involved in what your utility or your local government is doing. And that makes me excited as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The last question I might ask is, so we've talked a lot of kind of data intensive, but there's a lot of qualitative information that comes along with this as well. And just talking to people, or maybe you don't have the inventory yet, but you want to share your experience or otherwise. And I'm curious if anyone can speak to that mix between the qualitative and quantitative data that comes along with lead pipe replacement. And maybe Anna, I might pick on you since I think you had some thoughts on that front.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the, like, in the context of collecting qualitative data, we had these conversations in both the villages of Flossmoor and Hazel Crest about, you know, they have certain amounts of historical archived, like handwritten building documents. And we were planning to spend a bunch of weeks on site, like scanning and compiling and just sort of investing the time to see where we got. And then the pandemic struck and we're like, okay, we really can't do that at all. Let's figure out what data we can get from the assessor's office and see then what we build on top of that. And one of our goals early on in the project was to do sort of go for a ride with the public works, like the infrastructure manager, because he had a lot of internalized knowledge about the system that wasn't necessarily documented anywhere. And so we were going to go around in a car with him with a map and just sort of mark off on the map what he thought he knew about various parcels, and then incorporate that into the model somehow as one of the inputs. And we were able to do a little bit of that. We didn't get the whole community because of, you know, pandemic restrictions, but it was sort of an interesting foray into how to merge both, you know, written data, quantitative data sources, and then also use the sort of human knowledge, institutional knowledge of what's happened in the community over many years, especially one that's capacity strapped and so doesn't necessarily have that documented anywhere else.
Well, I think I'll end with a comment, and then Jesse can wrap it up finally. I think it's such an honor to be on the phone call with like so many powerful brains. First of all, and thank you for those attendees that have stuck with us to the very bitter end. I found the tail end of these Zoom meetings typically just start to get interesting when people start to engage and stop in PowerPoint mode and start to talk to each other. So I'll issue the same challenge I did in the past. I think as a judge, I was both impressed and slightly disappointed. And that is because there is no silver bullet to this, or shall I say lead bullet like to this to solve the problem. But there are all kinds of things that we can do collaborating too. I think one of the neat like innovations that have come out of Zoom meetings is people that may think that they're competitive now realize that we can complement each other. So like, I guess that's my closing comment, is figuring out who you can partner with and get some of the stuff answered and figured out, because this is a problem that's bigger than all of us. So on behalf of the judging panel, thank you all again. So I'll turn it back to Jesse for the last minute.
No, I think that's exactly right, Chris. And what I was really excited about these awards are is that it's a mix of technology companies and communication specialists and nonprofits and utilities, right? Like you have to collaborate, and really excited for kickstarting that process. Well, continuing that work, and we will continue to do so in the future. And really thank you for everyone. And as I mentioned, this is just the start. So have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.